Well, that's unconcerning. Whenever I was going off on a little anguish-filled rant, so on and so forth, apparently OBS Studio crashed. Not fun. Anyway, so let's get back to this. Alright. VS Code's pretty useful for a few things. I don't... Right now, I've tried it with a few different languages. So right, I tried it with, say for example, one second. I tried it with C and C++, C#. I've also tried it with Python. Python, I didn't do much with, but these others too. These were important to me, so I did actually look into these. And let me tell you, the core thing that I like the most is the ability to autocomplete code and to be able to build skeletons and add IntelliSense for imported files and the like. Neither of these seem to do that very well. At least that's been my experience thus far. However, JavaScript and HTML, Node being one of the most horrible freaking languages ever created, and JavaScript, that it's based off of a back-end implementation of also being the most awful language that's ever created, and HTML being could probably use a little massaging, get rid of all that extra crap, so on and so forth, that no one uses in CSS4 and shit like that. And yeah, I mean, it's alright for describing interface, but it still uses a web browser, which is a problem in my opinion. Anyway, for editing Electron and Node.js applications, this works pretty well. It really does. But there are a few little things, like testing IntelliSense, for example. Okay, I have my little binary tree implementation here, which works hella fucking fast. Okay, I named a key tree, and the import's name is key tree way up here. And my requires section, which is ugly as shit. I started breaking this code into modules, and the original Frankenstein code I created while I was half asleep for a long while, so on and so forth, didn't actually work out so great. But as you can see, it does actually pick up on the exports pretty well, which I like. There are some other issues though, however. If you type garbage like this is normal, right? That's good, alright? Shows up like it should, in my bar. Right up there on top, okay? And it's highlighted with that little blue icon right there, and the various methods essentially are highlighted with this little like cube icon here, so on and so forth. And then classes are classes, for example, or with this little tree icon, and so on and so forth. Presently I'm using this version, which I do definitely suggest 1.59 if it is available whenever this video is being viewed or recreated, as these people deny that the world's ever moving on. So now if you type something else in that's garbage, like this with an uppercase letter, because JavaScript is just case sensitive, alright, this will cause obviously a syntax error when you try to debug. Okay? Right? Yes, it does. So go ahead and stop that. The IntelliSense will actually pick up on the misspelling. So if I do this, alright, and then I start that, you see how both of them are there now? This could lead to some accidents, and I really think it should validate that your code is correct in some respect, and syntactically correct before it starts adding shit into IntelliSense. But that's just me, What do I know? I've only been a developer for like a decade. Point is, so over a decade in reality. They're gonna basically. I hope they don't drag me back. I really don't want to be dragged back. Sorry about that much. I don't want to forget everything. I know so much more than I used to know. I've had so much lovely little experiences fucking around with this shit. Okay, so of the other things, essentially, I do like essentially this here, this code overview. Essentially, I don't know how really useful it is unless you recognize essentially your code, which I sometimes do by its overall shape after it's formatted. But yeah, it's useful in that respect. And also allows you to very quickly navigate through your code as well, which is good. I like this. It's a nice little feature. Okay, going back to the main file. So you have multiple JS files that you need to simultaneously be able to launch, including like a set of unit tests, or maybe a little thing you're designing that's there and reads through your items and original JSON and generates a little report about how much files, how many files you've actually disk space you've actually been able to save, that sort of thing. Alright, so you can create multiple run configurations of relative ease. Now I want to mention that they have really come along in this. The earlier Node.js was really crappy. I mean, I started this on this very type of system, this type of Linux distribution, which is based off of Red Hat loosely and is named after a hat, after a very nice hat, a hat I'd really like one of. I like their Red Hats, I really do. I think they're so fucking awesome. I'd love to work at Red Hat. I really would. As a developer, if I had been able to start my career of C and C++, essentially, in systems programming, Red Hat would have been a really nice place to work. Really, really would have. Probably back in the 90s, though. Probably not very much now. Anyway, since the world is going to crap and everybody thinks everything's a big joke now. Anyway. So, in between wanting to die, I'm going to go continue with this VS Code demonstration. Alright, so you can edit the configurations of relative ease, and what this always does is it will, say for example, place this into a JSON file. VS Code, much like Node.js, works exclusively with JSON files for its configuration. Not only for the extension and the IDE settings, which I don't know quite how to directly access, but have popped up on occasion. Have popped up on occasion. For the extensions and for the editor itself, but in this .vs code subdirectory of your project is where you store the launch.js, which has all your various like launches, which point to different files that are going to be like the main, because JS doesn't have like a main function like C and C++ do, and C# for that matter, or Java. Or any of them, because it wasn't really meant to be a back-end programming language. It was made to be a crappy front-end fucking language. But yeah, it's alright. It's decent enough. I like it for the purposes I've used it for. It is something you can quickly learn. I mean, it's not that big. And it's good for web. It's good enough for web, for smaller web projects and the like. Certainly better than certain other ones. I mean, I personally would like to see a revision. TypeScript was a great idea by Microsoft, but it's one of those ones where they fell flat on their face because they didn't really like implement everything or create something that allows you quickly to create interfaces and documentation for various projects in JavaScript. So, it doesn't really end up working out that great. But, it's a good idea. It's a nice start. Sort of. Anyway. So, in between wanting to shoot myself, I'm going to continue with all of this. Okay. So you have several panes here on the left, and additional ones will appear as you add more things. Like I added this to-do tree, which is put out by, and I said this before, and last time I tried to make this video. Oh, such creative. Oh, what creative like usernames they just first like, oh me that. Anyway, Grunt Fugly. Anyway, Grunt Fugly made a really good to-do extension checker. Now, this entire project is written in something called Electron, which again runs in a fucking browser, which I don't like. But it is demonstrating that Electron is actually not too bad of a desktop scenario. I just wish they could remove the Chromium browser from the entire mix, and maybe, I don't know, make something like some kind of compiled freaking like HTML code. He creates a template in HTML and he compiles it to some kind of binary format and a series of class operations or some shit like that. It would be really nice, but then you wouldn't be able to add these lovely little things, which probably work off of a combination of additional HTML and JavaScript, or just to render various things. But this is pretty cool. Just mark in your code. Oh, /s to do check. I can just send an array in, which I don't think I can actually. Oh, what fun times, And I had to jump between the code, just like would be included by default in in Visual Studio. By default. Anyway, I mean, so this is an okay project. It's just not really a universal code editing tool. I mean, if you looked on this Linux desktop that I'm running things on, or laptop I'm running things on, there's multiple versions of different IDEs. I've tried Eclipse for C and C++, which I hate Eclipse, although it did seem to work better than certain alternatives in Linux. Linux is really lacking in good code editing options, in my opinion, or at least it was. All these people say, like, use Vim. Oh yeah, if I want to get rid of all forms of productivity, sure, I'll use Vim. That's make me fucking take longer to type everything. And although it does neurologically train you to remember some shit better, certainly, probably not as much. You know, I mean, you're still going to need a reference guide. I remember the days of Turbo Pascal and Turbo C++ when I tried. Played around with whenever and used in classes whenever I was in college and freaking high school originally, and you still hit that reference guide pretty frequently, you know, and there weren't anywhere near as many modules and libraries in Borland C and C++ and Borland Pascal as there are in the whole huge freaking family of GCC oriented projects, you know, which also cross boundaries between various languages and use different languages for different things and so on and so forth, which to some degree is not a bad idea. It's just, you know, it gets infuriating sometimes when you start seeing things like, you know, there's this new language called Rust and we're going to integrate it into the kernel. And there's this new language called Go. It's so cool. And there's this new language called Ruby. Isn't Ruby awesome? It's like, no, it looks like a dyslexic shat on a plate and fucking made it into a fucking, like, and it offered it up on a website for download is what it fucking looks like, okay? No. Ruby sucks fucking ass. It is the ugliest fucking language I have ever seen next to fucking Perl, and Perl at least is useful, you know? Anyway, so back to VS Code. Alright, I'm not sure what all languages are good for. Supposedly it's decent for Python as well. I haven't used Python, I use PyCharm because I couldn't set up environment variables and the like from my custom build environment like I could in PyCharm, even though it took some doing to get to that point. Alright, some searching. Here you run configurations, as I said, which get created in this lovely little file called launch.json, which goes by project and by project. You can install extensions through here. There's a whole bunch of them. The question is how many of them are really useful, how many are any good. You know, I don't know, honestly, how many of them are any good, or how many extra ones there are. That's strange. These start showing up by featured. And most popular. Let's look at those. So, like I said, they'll create there will be a different freaking, like, a different thing for various ones. Like if you want to add to your terminal, like tools, for example. Open any folder on a remote machine using SSH and take advantage of the VS Code's full feature set. Ooh. SSH editing SSH configuration. Okay, so like they'll make highlighters and extensions, including IntelliSense extensions for the various types of files you can open. Some of them work well enough. I personally, in practice, have found that the ones put out by Microsoft mostly suck, except the ones that are built right in as C2. They don't want people using this for C++ or C#. They want their flagship to continue to run. And honestly, I like Visual Studio. I just wish that it was economically priced, number one, and number two, that it actually ran on, which I guess community is fine unless you want to do something commercial. Yeah, I guess it is. And I wish it ran on Linux. I think a lot of people wish it ran on Linux, to be entirely honest. You know, so you could avoid Windows altogether. Just like they started porting MS-SQL to Linux, but it has some strange interactions where it will take like a minute and a half to shut down whenever you shut down your computer, and I'm getting off task right now, so let me stay on topic, okay? There's that additional, as I said, additional icons related to various GUI enhancements end up here. Here you have the ability to work in a terminal. Now, a bug I found is related to JIT. Do not do not, for the love of freaking God, do anything with JIT in this fucking terminal. It will fuck your goddamn entire repo's object tree up. I don't know why, but as of the last minor version release, essentially before this, it was doing that. I had to recreate. I don't look like I kept a backup, but it's like I would have had to recreate an entire fucking like software chain's history somehow, which is not going to happen, obviously. You know, so luckily I wasn't at any critical point whenever I used this and it fucked everything up. There is a source management or source control, essentially, like tab, which is located right here. I don't like it personally. I don't like the look of it. You know, I wish, again, there's another thing I wish they'd port. I wish they would port Tortoise JIT to Linux, because Tortoise JIT is freaking awesome. Tortoise SVN is freaking awesome. All those Tiger products are fucking awesome. They just are. They work as intended, and they integrate with other things like Beyond Compare, which is something that I'm probably going to do a little review on as well, because Beyond Compare is awesome. Fucking awesome. Anyway, put out by Scooter Software. Buy it. Actually buy it. It's worth the money. Anyway, your standard run configurations, everything else here. Terminal, they for some reason created an entire selection for this. I don't know what a run task is. Configure a task. I never really looked at that. npm install dependencies from package. npm test. Oh, I'm curious. What's the point of the tasks? Eh? What is the task? What is the point of the tasks? A run task. npm test. Okay, so apparently you can configure some things in that you would run on your project just to see what the hell is going on. So, no test specified. Well, that was useful. Anyway, if you build your crap with npm, essentially, this is useful for that, I guess. But apparently you can configure casts you normally use in here. And the one thing I don't really like is this shit. You know, I don't really like it. Control. Yeah. I'm trying to remember. Oh, P. So you can names. There's a way of bringing up. Ah, there we go. That brings up. There are a lot of lovely little like hotkeys in here. Most of which you don't really have any kind of reference for that I've noted. I could be wrong. They could all be listed nicely somewhere, you know, in a way that the things that are actually important, instead of the overload of extra features, essentially, is listed. You know, that could be there. Yeah, got some pretty commonplace things here. You know, get your line comment, toggle. Ooh, much prettier instead of the Control K, Control C. Oh, that works too, actually. Some of the Visual Studio, like hotkeys work as well, combinations work as well. So at least there isn't too much of a movement away there. And of course, they use their standard set of keys for like starting debugging, running without debugging, and so on and so forth. Looks like you can install additional debuggers, but it's a question as to which ones are actually going to work well. And that's where it's kind of hit or miss. Most of this is community contributed, and it's a fairly new project in the grand scheme of things. So some of the shit just doesn't work yet. You know, especially when you start getting into things that are just kind of strange, you know, and new and kind of useless. Point is, overall, this has not made more work for me to use this for JavaScript and Node.js. So I would say that this is a fairly decent editor for that. C and C#, I'm not particularly what's the word I'm looking for? I'm not particularly impressed. There are a whole bunch of other file formats that VS Code understands. I wish that they would show them all to some degree. There was even a way of adding custom custom LD paths and stuff like that into this, but it didn't work when I tried to build against one of my pre-compiled projects, which is OpenCV, the OpenCV library in this particular case. It seems like a fucking familiar video, and it is. So overall, it's a useful project, but it has come forward in leaps and bounds. Whereas it would crash